The great chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with the sounds of 100 different languages. Translation devices hummed softly as representatives from 32 species took their seats. The walls of the chamber were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of the room. Today, the crystals glowed a cool blue, calm and peaceful. Ambassador Daniel Cole sat in the human section with his small team. At 53 years old, he had spent most of his life serving humanity among the stars. His hair was gray at the temples, and his eyes carried the weight of too many disappointing meetings. Beside him sat Admiral Lisa Grant, a woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She was here as a military advisor, though she suspected her advice would be ignored as usual. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 40 years. In a galaxy where some species had been members for 10,000 years, humans were still considered children, newcomers, guests who should be grateful they were allowed at the table at all. High Chancellor rose from his elevated platform. He was an being with 4 arms and compound eyes that saw everything and respected nothing. His species had dominated council politics for centuries and saw no reason why that should ever change. "We begin today with a motion from the Dominion," announced. His voice was cold and clicking. "We propose restrictions on human expansion into the Outer Rim territories." Cole felt his stomach tighten, but he kept his face calm. This was not unexpected. "Humans breed too quickly," continued. "They consume resources at an alarming rate. If we do not control their growth now, they will spread like a disease across the galaxy." Several species made sounds of agreement. The massive reptilian beings nodded their heavy heads. The small and covered in golden fur whispered among themselves with worried expressions. Cole stood slowly. The chamber fell quiet. Many species were curious about what the human would say. Others simply wanted to watch him fail. "High Chancellor," Cole said, keeping his voice steady, "I would like to present some facts for the Council to consider." Waved one of his arms in a gesture that meant Cole could speak, though his posture showed he was not interested in listening. "For the past 15 years, human ships have protected Council shipping lanes from void raiders," Cole said. "We have lost 412 ships and over 6,000 lives defending trade routes that benefit every species in this room. We have done this without asking for payment, without asking for recognition. We did it because we believed in the idea of a united galaxy." The chamber was silent. Some representatives looked uncomfortable. "In that same time period," Cole continued, "not a single convoy escorted by human ships has been lost. Not one." "You protected your own interests," interrupted. "Humans use those trade routes too. Do not pretend your actions were selfless." "We protected everyone," Cole replied, "including species that have never said thank you, including species that voted to limit our rights just last year." Admiral Grant watched the faces around the room. She saw guilt on some, but mostly she saw indifference. These beings had already made up their minds about humans. "I have a request," Cole said. "Humanity asks for equal voting rights on military matters. Currently, we only have observer status. We defend this galaxy, but we have no voice in how it is defended." Laughter erupted from several sections of the chamber. They made clicking sounds of amusement. Even some of the friendlier species smiled as if Cole had told a joke. High Chancellor raised his arms for silence. "Ambassador Cole," he said, "humanity must earn its place. Perhaps in another century, when you have proven your worth, we will consider your request." Cole stared at the High Chancellor. He had heard these words before. He had heard them for 20 years. "Earn your place, prove your worth, wait your turn." A soft chime sounded from Cole's personal device. He looked down and read the message from Earth. He read it twice to make sure he understood. Admiral Grant leaned close. "Daniel, what is it?" Cole did not answer immediately. He stood very still, feeling the weight of history pressing down on him. 200 years of humanity reaching for the stars. 200 years of trying to find their place in a galaxy that did not want them. The United Earth government has voted, Cole said quietly. The decision was unanimous. He looked up at the chamber, at the crystal walls that now pulsed with an orange color, sensing the change in emotion, at the faces of beings who had never seen humans as equals and never would. High Chancellor, Cole said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber, I am authorized to inform the Galactic Council that humanity formally withdraws from all peace negotiations, defense agreements, and trade partnerships. This withdrawal is effective immediately. For a moment no one moved, no one spoke. Then laughed. It was a harsh, clicking sound that echoed off the crystal walls. You are bluffing, Ambassador. Humans cannot survive without Council resources. We survived for thousands of years before we met you, Cole replied. We will survive again. Go then, said, dismissing Cole with a wave of his arm. The galaxy will not notice you are gone. You are not as important as you believe. Cole gathered his materials. Admiral Grant stood beside him, her face unreadable. The rest of the human delegation followed them toward the exit. As they walked, Ambassador of the Collective reached out a small hand. His species looked almost like Earth rabbits, soft and gentle. Ambassador Cole, he said quietly, please reconsider. Not all of us feel as the do. Cole paused. He looked at with genuine sadness. Then perhaps you should have said something, Ambassador. In 200 years, your species never once stood up for us. Silence is also a choice. Lowered his head in shame. The human delegation left the chamber. Behind them, the crystal walls had turned a deep red, but no one understood what it meant. No one realized they were watching the beginning of the end. In orbit above the planet, Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of her flagship. She watched the world of Prime grow smaller as her fleet began its withdrawal. All ships have confirmed departure orders, her aide reported. We will be clear of Council space in 72 hours. Grant nodded. She thought about the dozens of smaller species who had never been cruel to humans but had never defended them either. Admiral, the aide asked, are you all right? Grant turned away from the viewport. No, she said, but we will be. I am not sure about them. Below, on the planet's surface, High Chancellor was already telling jokes about the dramatic human exit. The council members laughed and congratulated themselves on finally being free of the troublesome young species. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. At first, life continued as normal. The trade ships flew. The markets stayed open. The council members told each other that nothing had really changed. They were wrong. Trade Minister stood at the window of his office on IV, watching smoke rise from the commercial district. His golden fur was matted with sweat, and his small hands trembled as another explosion shook the station. The Void Raiders had come, and there was no one to stop them. Get me the human embassy, shouted at his assistant. The young looked at him with frightened eyes. Minister, the human embassy closed 8 weeks ago. All their people are gone. Felt his heart sink. He remembered sitting in the council chamber when they voted to restrict human expansion. He remembered laughing when Ambassador Cole made his dramatic exit. It had seemed so funny at the time. No one was laughing now. The Void Raiders were pirates who lived in the dark spaces between stars. For decades, they had been a minor problem because human patrol ships hunted them without mercy. Human captains had a reputation for never giving up, never stopping, never letting a single raider escape. The pirates learned to fear human ships more than any council fleet. But the human ships were gone now. In 3 months, Void Raider attacks had increased by 400%. They struck convoys that once had protection. They raided stations that once had defenders. They grew bold because there was no one left to punish them. Commander watched IV through the viewport of his civilian transport ship. He had served in the human Navy for 15 years before retiring. Now he commanded a simple evacuation vessel, picking up human citizens from Council space and bringing them home. "Commander, we are receiving distress calls from the station," his communications officer reported. "They are asking for military assistance." Shook his head slowly. "We are not a military ship. We are here to evacuate human civilians only." "Sir, there are thousands of people dying down there." "I know," closed his eyes for a moment. "Believe me, I know." His ship docked at the human section of the station. It was mostly empty now, but a few dozen humans had stayed behind, hoping things would get better. Met them at the airlock, hurrying them aboard. Trade Minister appeared, pushing through crowds of his own people. His golden fur was now gray with ash and his eyes were desperate. "Commander," gasped, "please, you must help us. Your ship has weapons. You could make a difference." Looked at the small alien. He felt pity but also anger. "Minister, I remember you. You voted 3 times to reduce human trade rights. You called us greedy in your speeches." Lowered his head. "I was wrong. We were all wrong, please." "We offered you friendship," said quietly. "We offered protection. We asked for nothing but respect. You gave us contempt instead." "I am sorry." "So am I," stepped back toward his ship. "But my orders are clear. I am here for human citizens only." Grabbed his arm. "Then take some of us with you, children at least, please." Hesitated. He looked at the crowds of terrified families holding each other, children crying. His orders were clear. His government had made the decision. Humanity was done saving people who did not appreciate them, but had become a naval officer because he wanted to protect people, all people. "Fine," he said finally. "Children and their parents only, as many as we can fit. But we leave in 10 minutes and I am not waiting for anyone." The evacuation was chaos, and his crew worked desperately to load passengers while Void Raider ships circled the station like sharks. They were not attacking the human ship. Even pirates knew better than to touch human vessels. The cost of revenge would be too high. As prepared to depart, the long-range sensors detected a new fleet entering the system. "Commander, warships incoming, 12 vessels." Felt a small hope. Perhaps the Council was finally responding. Perhaps they would save the station after all. But the fleet arrived 6 hours too late. By the time the commander realized there were raiders in the system, the pirates had already completed their attack and vanished into hyperspace. The station was crippled, thousands were dead, and the mighty fleet had accomplished nothing. Watched from a safe distance as they tried to organize a pursuit. Their movements were slow and confused. Their ships struggled to coordinate. He realized with shock that the military had relied on human tactical data and early warning systems for years. Without access to human intelligence networks, they were flying blind. "Their engineering looks terrible," his chief mechanic noted. "Half those ships are running on failing power cores. I thought they were supposed to have the strongest fleet in the Council." "They were," replied, "but they depended on human engineering support to maintain it. They never bothered to learn how to do it themselves. Why would they? We were always there to fix things for them." The fleet tried to intercept the retreating raiders. They flew into an ambush. 3 ships were destroyed in minutes. The rest retreated in disorder. Turned his ship toward human space and engaged the engines. Behind him, IV burned. On the Council of Prime, High Chancellor received the reports in his private chamber. 12 systems raided in the past month. 4 convoys completely lost. 3 warships destroyed. Trade routes becoming too dangerous to travel. His advisor stood in nervous silence, waiting for instructions. "This is temporary," declared. "Once we adjust our patrol schedules, everything will return to normal." A young advisor cleared his throat. "High Chancellor, I have been studying the records. In 15 years of human convoy escorts, they never lost a single protected ship. Their success rate was perfect. Glared at him, "What is your point? Perhaps we should consider reaching out to the humans, asking them to return." "Never." His voice was hard as stone. "We will not beg those primitives for help. The Dominion ruled this galaxy before humans learned to use fire. We do not need them." The young advisor said nothing more, but doubt filled his mind. He looked at the reports, at the growing list of attacks and failures, and wondered if his leader was wrong. Outside the chamber, news spread across the galaxy. Species that once felt safe began to feel afraid. Merchants who once traveled freely now hired armed escorts or did not travel at all. The great web of trade and cooperation that held the council together began to stretch and tear. And in the darkness between stars, the Void Raiders grew stronger every day. They had tasted weakness, and they wanted more. 6 months after humanity walked away, the Galactic Council met again on Prime. The great crystal chamber that once held representatives from 32 species was half empty. Many ambassadors could not attend because the travel routes were too dangerous. Others did not come because their worlds had bigger problems. High Chancellor called the session to order, but his voice lacked the confidence it once had. The crystal walls glowed a sickly yellow, reflecting the fear and uncertainty that filled the room. Ambassador of the Collective stood to speak. His small body trembled and his voice cracked with emotion. "The creeping plague has returned to our worlds," he announced. "Millions of my people are sick. Soon they will die." A murmur of horror passed through the chamber. The creeping plague was an ancient disease that had nearly destroyed the centuries ago. A cure had been found only because human scientists worked on the problem when no one else would. "We need more vaccine," continued, "but our supplies have run out. We cannot make more." A minister stood. "The Dominion will provide assistance. Our scientists will produce the vaccine." Shook his head sadly. "Your scientists have tried. They failed. The vaccine requires human medical knowledge and human equipment. Dr. Amy Nelson and her team produced 90% of the galaxy's supply. When the humans left, production stopped." The chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered Dr. Nelson. She had worked for 30 years to keep the and many other species healthy. She had never asked for payment or praise. She had done it because she believed in helping others. The council had never thanked her. They had called human medicine primitive and basic. They had laughed at human doctors who used simple solutions instead of complicated technology. Now those simple solutions were saving lives that council medicine could not save. "We must contact the humans," someone called out. "Ask them to send vaccines." General's response came 3 days later. It was delivered by automated probe because no human ship would enter council space. The message was short. "You made your position clear. We are done being your shield while you mock us behind your backs. Good luck with your plague." The delegate wept openly. Other species looked at the floor in shame. But the plague was not the only problem. Trade across the galaxy had collapsed. Every species used navigation software that humans had developed and maintained. When the humans left, they stopped updating the software. Without updates, the maps became wrong. Ships entered hyperspace and never came out. Others emerged in the wrong systems, lost and confused. The Empire, a brutal military power, had been held in check for decades by fear of human retaliation. They were strong, but not strong enough to fight humanity. So they had behaved themselves, following council rules even though they hated them. Now the fear was gone. Warships crossed into neighboring territory and began conquering smaller species. A peaceful civilization of artists and philosophers sent desperate calls for help. No help came. The fleet was too busy protecting trade routes. The other military powers were too weak or too afraid. They fell in 6 days. Their beautiful crystal cities were destroyed, their libraries burned. Their people were enslaved. High Chancellor called an emergency meeting of military leaders. "We must respond to aggression," he declared. "The council cannot appear weak." But the military leaders had no good answers. Their fleets were scattered, protecting dozens of different systems. Their ships were breaking down because human engineers no longer maintained them. Their tactics failed because human intelligence no longer guided them. "We need the humans," an admiral said quietly. "Without them, we cannot we cannot stop the raiders, we cannot do anything." Slammed his four fists on the table. "We do not need them. We survived for thousands of years before humans existed. We will survive now." "Will we?" the admiral asked. "Look around this table, Chancellor. Half our leaders are missing because their worlds are under attack. Our economy is failing. Our people are dying. What exactly are we surviving?" Had no answer. On Earth, former Ambassador Daniel Cole watched the council broadcasts in his apartment. His daughter Sarah sat beside him, her young face troubled by what she saw. "Those people are suffering," Sarah said. "Why don't we help them?" Cole sighed deeply. "Because they hurt us, sweetheart. For 200 years we tried to be their friends. We protected them. We healed them. We asked only to be treated as equals. They refused. But they are dying now. Isn't that enough punishment?" Cole looked at his daughter. She was so young, so full of hope. She had not spent decades being laughed at in council chambers. She had not watched human soldiers die protecting species who called them animals behind closed doors. "Maybe it is," Cole admitted. "But the decision is not mine to make. Earth's government has spoken. We will not return to the council." "What if they ask nicely?" Cole smiled sadly. "They will not ask nicely. They do not know how. They have never had to ask anyone for anything." Far away on a world, the creeping plague spread through crowded cities. Hospitals overflowed. Doctors worked without rest, but they could not stop the disease. They did not have the knowledge. They did not have the medicine. An old healer sat beside a dying patient and wept. On his desk was a photograph of Dr. Amy Nelson, taken years ago when she visited to train local medical staff. In the picture, she was smiling, surrounded by children she had saved from the last outbreak. "We were fools," the healer whispered. "She loved us and we let her go." The patient died, then another, then another. And across the galaxy, species that had once felt safe began to understand a terrible truth. Humanity had not just been their protectors. Humanity had been the foundation that held everything together. Without that foundation, the entire structure was collapsing. High Chancellor sat alone in his chamber that night, reading reports of death and destruction. For the first time in his long life, he felt afraid. He looked at an old picture of the council in better days. In the corner of the image, almost hidden, stood Ambassador Cole and his human delegation. They were smiling, hopeful, believing that they could build a better galaxy together with their new friends. Had crushed that hope, he had laughed at it, he had called it naive. Now he wondered if the humans had been right all along. 1 year had passed since humanity from the Galactic Council. The galaxy that had once seemed so stable and peaceful was now tearing itself apart. The Empire had conquered 8 star systems. Millions of refugees fled their homes, crowding into council space, begging for protection that no one could provide. The Void Raiders had united under a brutal leader named Captain, forming a shadow empire of pirates and criminals that controlled entire trade routes. But these problems were nothing compared to what came from the darkness beyond known space. Deep space sensors detected the movement first. Thousands of ships, moving in perfect formation, eating everything in their path. The Devourer swarm had awakened. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his flagship in Earth orbit, reading the intelligence reports. He was a tall man with Korean features and calm eyes that had seen many battles. As commander of Earth's home fleet, it was his job to keep humanity safe. The swarm has consumed 3 outer colonies already, his intelligence officer reported. Council worlds. They're moving toward the galactic core. Park nodded slowly. What do we know about them? Ancient records say they nearly destroyed the galaxy 10,000 years ago. They're a hive mind. No individuals, no mercy, no negotiation. They simply consume everything biological and move on. How were they stopped before? The officer hesitated. That's the strange part, Admiral. The records say a coalition of species defeated them, led by an endurance predator race that refused to surrender. The translation is unclear, but the description matches humans almost perfectly. Park raised an eyebrow. Humans weren't in space 10,000 years ago. No, sir, but the records describe a species that would chase prey for days without stopping, a species that could survive wounds that would kill others, a species whose greatest strength was not giving up. The officer paused. Whoever they were, they fought the swarm alone for years until other species joined them. They won through pure stubbornness. On the council, panic was spreading. Emergency sessions were called and canceled. Leaders argued about what to do, but no one had answers. Their fleets were broken. Their economies were collapsed. They had nothing left to fight with. High Chancellor had been removed from power 2 months earlier. His own people turned against him when evidence emerged that leadership had known for decades how essential humans were. They had hidden this information to maintain their political dominance. Now that secret had destroyed them. Son, known as Young, had been the one to reveal the truth. Unlike his father, he had spent time among humans. He had seen their kindness and their strength. He understood what his species had thrown away. Now Young did something his father would never have approved. He traveled to Earth alone, without permission, without guards, to beg for help. He found former Ambassador Daniel Cole living quietly in a small house near the ocean. Cole was surprised to see it at his door, but he invited the young alien inside and offered him tea. "My people are going to die," Young said. "Everyone is going to die. The swarm will consume everything." Cole sat across from him, his face tired but not unkind. "I know." "Then help us, please. You're the only ones who can." Cole shook his head slowly. "It's not my decision anymore. I'm retired. Earth's government has voted to protect only human worlds. We don't have the resources to save everyone. You have the strongest fleet in the galaxy. A fleet we built because no one else would protect us. A fleet your father called unnecessary and aggressive. A fleet the council voted to limit just 2 years ago." Young lowered his head. "I am sorry. I know my people hurt yours. I know we were arrogant and cruel. I'm not asking you to forget that. I'm asking you to be better than us." Cole was quiet for a long moment. He remembered the laughter in the council chamber. He remembered watching human soldiers die defending species that despised them. He remembered the pain of rejection after rejection after rejection. But he also remembered why he became a diplomat in the first place. He believed in building bridges. He believed that different species could learn to understand each other. He had spent his whole life trying to prove that belief was not foolish. "What would it take?" Cole asked finally. "If I were to speak to our government, what would you offer?" Young looked up with hope in his compound eyes. "Anything, everything. Full recognition of humanity as equals. Formal apology from every council species. Reparations for decades of discrimination. Whatever you want." "Those are words. We've heard words before." "Then let us prove it with actions. The council will vote to make humanity a founding member of a new government. Not guests, not junior partners, equals from the beginning." Cole considered this. "And if you're lying, if this is just another trick to get our help, then you can leave again, and this time you'll be right to do it." Young spread his 4 arms in a gesture of openness. "I'm not asking you to trust us. I'm asking you to give us one more chance to earn your trust." Cole stood and walked to the window. Outside, the ocean sparkled under Earth's sun. Somewhere beyond those blue waters, beyond the atmosphere, beyond the stars, the devourer swarm was moving closer. It would take years to reach human space, but it would come eventually. Running away was not really an option. "I'll talk to some people," Cole said. "No promises." Young bowed deeply. "Thank you, that's all I ask." As the young left, Cole sat down heavily in his chair. His daughter Sarah came in from the next room. She had been listening. "You're going to help them, aren't you?" she asked. Cole sighed. "I don't know yet. Part of me wants to let them suffer. They earned it. But that's not who I want to be." Cole looked at his daughter. "Revenge feels good, but it doesn't build anything. It just tears things down. So we save them, even though they don't deserve it." Cole smiled sadly. "Maybe especially because they don't deserve it. That's what makes us different from them. We do the right thing even when it's hard, even when it hurts." Sarah sat beside her father. "Do you think they'll ever really change?" Cole thought about Young, about the shame in his eyes, about the courage it took to come here alone and beg. "Some of them already have," he said. "Maybe that's enough to start with." On the edge of known space, the devourer swarm consumed another world. 1 billion lives ended in hours. The hive mind felt nothing, knew nothing, wanted nothing except to grow. Time was running out for everyone. The council delegation arrived on Earth 2 weeks after Young's visit. Their ship was small and carried no weapons. It was a message of peace, of humility, of desperation. Ambassador led the group. His soft fur had turned gray with stress, and his eyes were tired from months of watching his people die. Behind him walked representatives from every surviving council species. Even they had sent someone, though they stood apart from the others with shame on their reptilian faces. They were brought to the great hall of Earth's parliament, where human leaders from every nation had gathered. General sat in the military section, her arms crossed, her face hard. She had argued against letting the aliens land at all. Stepped forward and bowed deeply. "People of Earth," he began, his voice trembling, "we have come not to demand but to ask, not as superiors but as equals, not as masters but as those who need help." The hall was silent. Humans who had never met an alien watched with curiosity and suspicion. "For 200 years humanity tried to be our friends," continued. "You protected our ships, you healed our sick, you asked only for respect in return. We gave you mockery instead. We laughed at your kindness, we called your generosity weakness." He paused, fighting back tears. "We were wrong, we were fools, and now we are dying because of our foolishness." General stood. "Pretty words, Ambassador, but we've heard pretty words before. What's different this time?" Reached into his robes and pulled out a document. "This is a treaty signed by every remaining council species. It recognizes humanity as a founding equal member of a new galactic government. It includes a formal apology for past wrongs. It provides compensation for human lives lost defending ungrateful allies." He held out the document. "But more than paper, we offer our promise, not the promise of governments or politicians, the promise of ordinary people who finally understand what we lost when we drove you away." Daniel Cole sat in the observer gallery, watching the scene below. He had been invited as a special guest, though he held no official position. Beside him sat his daughter Sarah, now old enough to understand the weight of this moment. The debate that followed was fierce. General argued that humanity owed the galaxy nothing. Other leaders spoke of the cost in lives and resources. Some demanded guarantees that the aliens could not provide. Then Admiral Park rose to speak. His calm voice cut through the noise. "I have studied the devourer swarm," he said. "They are coming. Not today, not tomorrow, but they are coming. If we do nothing, they will consume the council worlds. Then they will turn toward us. We can hide behind our borders for a few more years, but eventually we will face them alone." He looked around the hall. "Or we can face them together, not because we owe anyone anything, Not because we forgive what was done to us, but because fighting alongside others makes us stronger than fighting alone. Shook her head. They'll use us again. They'll take our help and then forget their promises. Park nodded. Maybe, but I'd rather take that chance than watch the galaxy burn and know we could have stopped it. Cole watched the faces of his fellow humans. He saw anger, doubt, fear, but he also saw something else. The same stubborn hope that had driven humanity to reach for the stars in the first place. The vote was close. Many said no, but enough said yes. Humanity would return to the galaxy. 3 weeks later, Admiral Park's fleet launched from Earth orbit. 200 warships, the finest humanity had ever built. They carried soldiers who had been trained for this moment their entire lives. They carried weapons that Council species had never seen. They also carried something more powerful than weapons. They carried the human refusal to give up. The Battle of Prime would be remembered for 1,000 years. The Devourer swarm arrived with 10,000 ships. They expected easy prey, soft civilizations that would run or die. They found humans instead. Park's fleet held the line while civilian ships evacuated millions of aliens from the threatened world. Human pilots flew missions that no other species would attempt. Human soldiers fought in conditions that would have broken any other army. For the first time the swarm encountered something it did not understand. An enemy that did not run. An enemy that kept fighting even when wounded, even when exhausted, even when logic said victory was impossible. The fleet fought beside the humans. So did the species that had never cooperated before work together under human command. They learned that human tactics were not primitive. They were brilliant. The battle lasted 3 days. Ships burned. Lives ended. The stars themselves seemed to weep. But in the end, the swarm was driven back. They were not destroyed. They would return someday, but they had learned fear. They had learned that this galaxy had protectors who would never stop fighting. In the aftermath, a new galactic council was formed. Humanity sat at the center of the table not as guests but as founders, equal voices, equal respect. Ambassador gave a speech honoring the humans who had died. They came to save people who had hurt them, he said. They gave their lives for species who had mocked them. This is what humanity is. This is why they are worthy of leading us. Daniel Cole stood at a memorial wall covered with the names of fallen human soldiers. So many names, so many lives given for a galaxy that had treated them as lesser beings. Young approached and stood beside him. Neither spoke for a long moment. "Do you think we deserve to be saved?" Young asked finally. Cole considered the question. "No," he admitted, "probably not." "Then why did you come back?" Cole touched one of the names on the wall. Lieutenant Amy, age 24. She had died protecting a hospital ship. "Because this is who we are," Cole said. "We protect others, not because they deserve it, not because they're grateful, but because that's what humans do. We see someone in trouble and we help. It's that simple." Young bowed his head. "We will try to be worthy of such protectors." "I hope so," Cole smiled sadly. "But even if you're not, we'll probably save you again anyway. That's our weakness and our strength." The sun set over the memorial, casting long shadows across the names of the fallen. Somewhere above, human ships patrolled the stars once more, protecting, guarding, refusing to give up. Because that was what humanity did. That was what humanity would always do.